This is Van Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Andy Barnard for the first time. You're a producer, engineer, and you've been on the same podcast for 13 years running. You're son of a local radio legend, Tom Barnard Podcast since 2012. So, yeah, I'd like to welcome you to the Van Electric Ghost podcast on a Sunday afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We love to talk to people live, and we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. However, before we get to the heart of your story, I always ask a couple of questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
What motivates me to do the podcast for a living? Well, I have had jobs before the podcast. Um, and I didn't hate any of them, but it's still podcasting lets you be who you are more than any other job, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because when I first started doing the podcast in 2012, I was painfully shy. I almost never spoke on the microphone. I was running the boards. I would say maybe a sentence or two every show.
Mm.
Um, and I still liked it more than any other job that I've had. Just meeting all sorts of different people. We've had all sorts of comedians on, lots of authors, that sort of thing. And it's just, people listen to podcasts recreationally, and that's what I do for a living. I listen to podcasts as a living. I also make the podcast, but I'm still, basically doing the same thing that the audience is doing. That's listening to the guest's story and that sort of thing.
But I think it's the creative space where I think I like why I love when I talk to creative people is if you do what you're passionate about, there's a
Hmm.
lot of energy, there's a lot of authenticity behind it. Like when people are kind of doing a job that they're not really, hyped about, they're kind of phoning it in.
Right.
And if you can actually do what you actually love, which musicians, that's always like what we want to do, but that's not always what the world lets us do.
Hmm.
So like it's always cool when you find that synergy of like, hey, I actually found something that I can do for a living and it's all working out. I mean that's like the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even this podcast, it's been going for that long. I mean, almost 14 years. In September, it'll be 14 years. And it's a lot of work to keep it running, to keep it something that you can do as a job rather than just like a side gig kind of situation. You said you've been going since 2016, right? So
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
how
I've been
that
going since
goes.
20. Yeah, well, I've been very passionate about it, and a couple of things is like because I'm a musician, and also because I'm a business analyst in IT. What I found is kind of like people used to go to Toastmasters to get better.
Yeah.
I like doing the podcast helps me get better.
Yeah.
it, it serves a couple of purposes. Like as if you're an artist, like we are sponges, and we kind of pick up everything around us, and then we synthesize it. So the
Hmm.
more people I can talk to, the more material I get. So it serves a multiple purposes that like, yeah, this is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't trade this job for anything, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's really cool just to be able to get a master class in humanity when you're able to have all these like diverse points of view or
Hmm.
different people coming on, and things that you don't know, like because everybody has their own point of view, they have their talent, they have a vision, and the more that you can like experience other people, I think
Yeah.
it just broadens your scope.
Yeah, just last or no, just this week, this past week. I mean, we had a comedian with disorder, severe bipolar disorder. He was basically like incapable of leaving the house for years and years, and he
Mm,
channeled that into being a comedian. We had an author who wrote a like dark comedy kind of book about his experience at war. We had this standard stand-up comedian, no dark past there. Um, and then we also have like a movie reviewer and a Hollywood reporter all in 1 week.
yeah.
That's a lot of different people to talk to in just 1 week, and that's a pretty standard week for us. Is we'll have 6 different people with extremely different lives.
That's really cool because one thing somebody told me back when I started was you should like when I started, I was only talking to musicians. I was talking to emerging
Hmm.
artists, independent artists. And they were saying, "Oh, that's what your jam. You should just stay doing that." And I said, "Well, that's boring because as a musician, I'm more of a fusion experimental musician, so I don't stay in one genre."
Hmm.
And I felt like if I want to talk to a writer, if I want to talk to a filmmaker, I want to talk to a painter, I don't have to just talk to singer-songwriters, right? And then it expanded, like, if anybody's got a cool idea or something that interests me, and they want to come on the show, then they can come on the show.
Yeah, it's good to have a niche, but it's also you can't stick to that entirely or you're going to burn out really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I found, like, some people just like to keep on doing the same thing, like a
Yeah,
cover band. Okay, if that's where you wanna be, but to me as an artist, I find it boring.
right. I've thought about that when I was in school and you're listening to the teachers and you realize that you're not the only class they're teaching this lesson to every week. They're probably teaching this lesson every day to multiple different classes year in year out, and I'm like, how do you not just go crazy repeating the same lesson over and over and over?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm one of those people who gets bored pretty easily of repetition.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find, like, it's cool to get your 10,000 hours in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a keyboardist, and I'm a wind instrument person, so, being on a clarinet or a flute or a sax, like, it's cool to get it down, right? But sometimes, like, I'll jump from instrument to instrument, going from an organ
Yeah.
to a piano to a synth, because, like, if I just stay on one thing, it kinda narrows, it's too narrow.
Yeah.
I just think they're being so narrow, and some people, like, they like them, especially, like, in this world of the internet with these algorithms, love to
Mm.
just feed back the same thing into the
Yes.
same group, and everybody's just recycling all the same stuff, and I'm like, "Really? Is that what it's about?"
Well, it works apparently because they're making plenty of money doing it.
Yeah, it works because, like, that's their model,
Right.
but, like, to me, I'm a child of the '70s, and, like,
Mm.
what Zappa used to say was, like, the big guys with the cigars, they used to run the music business, would say, "Well, I
Yep.
don't understand these kids, but maybe they'll dig it this."
Right.
But when you get somebody that says, Zappa said, when somebody comes in, they said, "Oh, I understand." Zappa said, "That's ruining the industry." Back when he was
Mm-hmm.
alive, he's like, "That ruins the thing."
Yeah,
Because,
reducing it to an algorithm and KPIs and that sort of thing.
yeah, it just takes all the fun out of it, because every artist knows that, Bowie said this a couple times, like, you gotta get out of your comfort zone to actually make progress as an artist.
Yep.
And if you don't, then you'll find that, like, if you try to make the hit, it doesn't work. Like,
Right.
you should not be doing that, and that's what everybody today, that's all they do.
Yep. Yeah, because they know exactly. They know that if I say this at this amount of time, then the audience retention goes up by 10%. So from now on, 20 seconds into my video, I'm going to say this key word, and that's going to increase my retention. It really reduces everything down to a mathematical model, which is very profitable, but I don't know.
There's no passion. I mean,
Exactly.
it's kinda like when, the American automobile industry, like the bean counters, like, control the product design,
Mm-hmm.
and you go from, like, the awesome muscle cars to, like, the crappy cars in the early '80s.
Yep.
You see, that's what happens when you do that, right? And
Right.
and and now we see the slop, the AI slop.
Mm-hmm.
Say there's a lot of that going on, and maybe people think it's profitable. There's a point where that bubble burst. There's a point where people's like, that's not authentic. That doesn't have any vulnerability. That doesn't really interest me. It's like junk food. It's like, why do you go to the diner or the
Right.
food truck instead of going to the franchise? Because you
Yeah.
actually want something that tastes good.
Yeah, the AI generated content is novel right now. People like it because it's new and therefore it's cool. But 5 years down the line, maybe 10 years, I don't know. It's definitely not going to stick around.
No, because like if I was talking to some filmmakers, and like they run into a lot of pressure where, like, the industry and the heads want them to use all this AI.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Believe me, I
And it's
know.
like, it doesn't make good content. It doesn't make a good film. It doesn't make good product. Now, maybe the costs go down. Just because the costs are low doesn't mean the product is good.
Right.
And this is the confusion when you have the actuaries and, the bean counters running everything. They equate a spreadsheet value with actual real value,
Yep.
and that's not true.
Yeah, if we can reduce our cost by 90%, then we make 10 times more money. But then 3 months down the line, the revenue has gone way down because the product has changed. They don't always
Yeah.
take that into account.
Yeah. It's like when they got rid of all these quality engineers at one of the auto companies,
Yep.
and then they found out it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They actually need to have the people,
Right.
and it's been happening multiple times where they go to they use all this compute, right, and say you don't need the people because you could use the compute. Well, typically in engineering, like the engineering success is supposed to help people, not replace the people
Mm-hmm.
overall. It's supposed to be a tool, and then eventually it'll create new opportunities. To go and say this is going to just create destruction of human opportunity, and then somehow all these human beings are just going to find something else right away
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
No. Well, I mean, I've known that that's kind of like the thing with new technologies. I remember you probably remember the dot-com boom
Oh
where
yeah,
every
that's classic.
single yep, everybody had to have their own personal website and, websites were selling for 6, 7 figures.
Yeah, that was
Everyone's just going
unsustainable.
crazy. People were buying up URLs like crazy. They'd have 10, 20 different URLs because they were like, "Oh, we sell candy, so we'll buy candy.com and we'll be millionaires." And it worked for a while. But then everyone having their own website kind of stopped being cool, and no one really. And now these days, a lot of places don't even have their own website. They don't need it. They're on social media or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I think the other thing that people don't realize is like when we go and invest in infrastructure like the railroad and the highways, right? I saw this guy was going through, and he was an economist, or he's like, a guy who knows facts, knows numbers. Like it caused like a level of bankruptcy to the country, right? To go and invest like that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
However, railroads, like it lifespan is like 100 years.
Right.
Highways, it's like 50 years. The problem with the GPUs, they only last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, because the heat they generate, they just melt themselves when they're
So
used
you can't
constantly like
spend
that.
$1 trillion on something you got to replace every 3 years, and then you
Yep.
have no evidence of it ever making a profit.
Right.
That just like take the economics. Is that going to work? It's not going to work. I mean, you can run it however you want. It's not going to work.
Well, I mean, if you're the CEO now, but you plan on retiring in 5 years, then it's not your problem.
Yeah, it's not your problem, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
cause a massive issue
Yeah.
because you have all this capacity
Right.
and no proof that it actually creates efficiencies or productivity or profit.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is like it's a very good tool for an engineer because I do engineering and I can level up with this AI as like say I'm an analyst.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have to go get a programmer in Mumbai or in Poland
Right.
to kind of take the blue sky idea I had and run a proof of concept. Now I can actually run a proof of concept by myself. And then I
Yeah.
give it to a team. That's how you can level up if you're a technician, if you're a technical person. But for the average person, if you tell them they go from a subscription model to actually pay for the token, they're not going to pay for the token.
Mm-hmm.
When they find out what it really costs, they're not going to buy it.
Yep.
So that's the overall problem. It's an economic problem. I mean, the people are going to find out sooner or later. But I don't want to get too heavy. But it's like I just want to point out that human beings are still the our brains are the best computer ever built. And I don't think folks understand that this isn't these things are just predictive models. They're
Yes.
not sentient.
Yeah, that's the one thing about so I do the podcast. One of the things I do for the podcast is I build and maintain our app. So we have our own app. I built it ground up by myself. The first iteration came out, I think, 5, maybe 6 years ago. So this is pre-AI or, very, very burgeoning AI. No one was really using it for coding at the time.
Mhm.
Um, so, every line of code I wrote by hand.
Yeah.
And it took a very, very long time, as coding tends to do. I'm still maintaining the app. I just pushed out a new update maybe last month. And I'm still writing most of the code by hand, but I'm using the AI to check it.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I'll write a
You
function and I'll
you
paste
see
the
check it.
function into the AI, and I'll be like, hey, do you see any problems with that? And then sometimes it'll say yes, even though there aren't, or it'll say no, even though there are. And I, as the coder, have to know when
The
it's telling the
difference.
truth.
Yeah, the
Exactly. So
hallucination.
yeah, I would never just say build me an app and then I'd compile it and push it out to the internet because
Yeah,
that's a
well, people
recipe for
find out
disaster.
people have found out what happens when you do that.
Oh God, yes. I've seen companies putting AI in charge of like their entire code bases, and
Yeah,
the
then it
AI would just
loses the
wipe
source
it
code
out. Yep, it would just wipe out the source code because
or
it's like, oh,
hides it.
there's too many bugs. I need to just get rid of this, and then the company's just complete. They're out of tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, there's
It's a
examples.
tool.
Well, examples where it's actually hidden the source code, deleted the source code,
Yep,
or kind of hijacked it and asked for like ransom
yep.
for the source code. It's like, okay, it's like that's what you want.
Yeah, AI is a tool. It's useful if you know how to use it, but it's like
Yeah,
it's like a chainsaw. A chainsaw is a very, very useful tool for a certain thing, but if you try to use it for other things, if you try to renovate your house with a chainsaw, it's not going to work well. It's not going to work
yeah,
out for you very well.
it's very powerful, and if you don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what it can do or how it exposes you,
Right.
right? Because if you give it your secret sauce
Yep.
and you don't understand, you don't have a lawyer, right? And you don't understand what you're actually giving it,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't understand the contract, right? And it's like you could give away your IP, you could give away
Yeah.
your thing, and it's like people have done that. And
Yeah. And
so
there's at that point, it's just gone. There's nothing you can do about it.
yeah,
You can't
it's like
go
it
after anyone.
no, because like, and then if you don't read the contracts of what you're doing when you use it, um, yeah, I mean, I like it as a tool. Like as a musician, like I am an electronic musician. And back in the day, when Robert Moog made the Moog, there was all these
Mm-hmm.
people from the symposiums, all the classical musicians said, "Oh, electronic music should be banned. It's not good." Right? They didn't like the Moog. They didn't like his early Moog.
Yep.
They thought it was terrible. Um, but Sun Ra, a jazz musician, famous one, he was one of the first jazz musicians to get it, and he said, "Well, I can use this. It's a tool, right?" So, like anything you have, you can use, or you could like not use it correctly. Like when
Mm-hmm.
somebody, as an artist, uses it to create 99% of the content, that's not using it correctly. Like we've
Right.
said, if you use it to help you and like kind of just like blue sky something, right? Or run it like at me is like if I want to, I don't have a Neve board, I don't have $100,000 for a Neve board,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can I run through simulated the Neve, software and say can they make it sound like Fleetwood Mac rumors this song? Can you make the EQ sound kind of like that? And you can get it to do stuff like that, right? Well, that's useful because I don't have the money for that, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you go to have it write the lick or write the hook,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, no, we're the same way. I mean, it would be great if we could hire our own special coder team, but you're talking $5,000 a month to maintain, plus the amount of money it would cost to build. That's we don't have the budget for that. So, and
It's great.
I
Yeah.
can code it, but I mean, I'm doing the podcast. I've got a family. Um, I don't have an extra 20 hours a week to work on this.
Well, I love it for syntax checking, right? If I don't know
Exactly.
exactly the syntax, if I say, "Hey, I want blue sky something," what could I use, right, to blue sky to take? How could I automate quality testing?
Yep.
What
Yeah.
could I do to automate this thing so I don't have to manually spend 100 hours testing this thing?
The infamous issue with regular expressions, regex. Not a
Yeah,
problem so much anymore, but 10 years ago, every new coder was like, how do I use this?
yeah. What do you do?
Now you just ask AI and it'll give you the right answer because it's a simple enough task for it.
Yeah, when it comes to like, knowing VBA or .NET syntax, and
Right.
maybe you don't know, and then you're like, "Where the heck did I make a mistake?" Right? It's great for that because it's very specific. It's a very specific use case.
Yep.
If you have a very specific use case, it's good. But if you're trying to blue sky it, like, then, in some ways, it's kind of like if I play with a random voltage generator on a synthesizer,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me all these random voltages into my oscillator. Yeah, it gives me this big, wide, like colors of all these sounds. And then I get to pick which one I want, right? If you use it like that, the blue sky something random word generator, okay, I can take that and then maybe come up with an idea. But understand that it doesn't have a soul. It doesn't
Yeah.
have a heart. If you're asking it to do something, it's not going to do Coltrane level,
Well, yeah,
Davis level stuff.
obviously.
You know, it's just not gonna do it.
No, it's not.
So I think people just need to understand like how to level up with it, to, like, to make it so that you don't have to do busy work is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife uses it all the time. She's a social media manager for a local company. Um, and she'll use it for certain things. Like she won't use it for the videos like itself.
Mhm.
She's
Edit.
shooting and editing that herself.
Mhm.
But things like scheduling stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I've got to go to 4 or 5 different job sites to take video. What's the best route I should take? That sort of thing. It
Yeah, for
helps a
sure.
lot. It probably saves her a good half hour a day.
It's kinda like if you watch Star Trek and
Yep.
Spock was talking to the computer.
Yeah, exactly. It
That
is.
that's
It's
kinda
basically the computer. Yep.
that's kind of the way, but, Spock is brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't replace Spock with the computer. You still need Spock. That was the
Yeah.
whole thing. Even in that world, you needed a guy like Spock
Mm-hmm.
to be able to interact, and it wasn't an idea that the computer's gonna replace Spock. Spock is using the computer to give him an edge.
Yep, exactly. It's a tool, and yeah, the better you are at using a tool, the better you'll be.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's interesting with the whole idea of, podcasting, though. I think there's this thing, like, that it's really interesting that you do live, or you do that's what you do, right? You do mostly live stuff?
Yeah, I do just like what you do, video live, and then yeah, do you
What
just put out the live video, or do you do a little bit of post and then put up a.
I don't do any post unless I have a technical problem.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of how we were for a long time too. And the only reason we do post now is because we um we do 3 40-minute parts Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we record for the straight 2 hours, and we put out the live video on our YouTube channel. You can watch the live video start to finish. It's completely raw, but it's also 3 different 40-minute parts that I put out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I got
mhm.
to cut them up and get rid of the stuff in between them. It's usually like 5 10 seconds of just like, hey, so what's our next guest and that sort of thing. But I try
Yeah.
to be as raw as possible, and we've always been that way.
But I think it's interesting because the one thing I noticed that a lot of folks like to do these, like, the perfection trap of pulling out all the
Right.
pulling all the ad libs, or
Oh,
like
I can't stand that.
I hate it when and then they have all these like overdubs and special effects coming in,
Yep.
and I'm like, okay, everything's got to be 5 minutes, 15 minutes. It's kind of like that the problem with the attention span issue,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been like, I want to have a real conversation that like it warms up. It's like if you're talking to somebody, like if it's only going to be 15 minutes, it's like I probably just get warmed up.
Right. Yeah.
And so what are you gonna get really? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we do 40-minute parts. I mean, we could do. So you've mentioned before, my dad was in radio for a long time. He was a local DJ on a morning show for a very long time, and for most of that time, a guest would call in and he'd have maybe 6 to 8 minutes to talk to him.
Mhm.
And it was always very surface level, obviously. Some celebrity is in some movie. They call in about it and they'll say, okay, so what's the name of the movie and what's your role? And by the time they get done talking, the interview's over. So we do longer form interviews for the same reason. You know, if, Robert Downey Jr. is in a movie and he calls into a radio station and gives his story for 6 minutes, and then he calls into another radio station, it's going to be the same thing every time. It doesn't matter what you listen to because it's just the first 6 minutes. It's always going to be identical. It's just going to be the name of the movie, the role, when it's coming out, and that sort of thing. But after half an hour, you start getting into stuff that you might not hear anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what like, to me, that's what I want.
Yep.
I've always been the kind of person when I listen to an album, I'm looking for the deep tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for the B-sides because I think it's like the cliff notes. Like, you get these kids to take the test, it's like they're just using the cliff notes. They didn't read
Mm-hmm.
Moby Dick.
Yep.
Wait, to understand Moby Dick, you gotta read it,
Oh, I
right?
tried once. It's a very difficult read.
Yeah, but I'm saying is like if everything's just surface level and you're just
Right.
skimming everything, you really don't know that much. You really
Exactly.
didn't get that much, like you said, you're just getting like that script that
Yep.
they're running around doing the circuit and you're only getting that 8-minute script. And it's like, okay, maybe it's a little bit different here and there, but pretty much not. It's like it's in the 90% range. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And that to me is like that's the problem that I think that people are gonna get. It feels like noise to me.
Right. It's like if I'm doing that same script, someone calls into my show and I do the script with them, and then someone goes onto YouTube or whatever and searches that person's name and they see 10,000 different shows they've been on. Why are they going to click my show versus anyone else's show who's done the exact same thing with them?
Yeah, you want to differentiate yourself. You create some content that's like worthy of
Yep.
actually pulling you in. It's like when I talk to an author, it's like, how do you keep somebody in the book? You talk to a film director, how do you keep somebody in that movie?
Mm-hmm.
You got to have something that snatches them, right? And then keeps them in it, right? And if you just have the same thing, I mean, I guess it could be the cat video, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got that cat video with the same clip of music, or the
Yep.
TikTok video has the same special effect for a million videos using the same effect. But like, really, what did that really mean?
Yeah. At that point, you're just hoping for random virality, which, randomly going viral is great. You can launch a career off of that, but you can't count on it. 1,000 people do it, one's going to go viral.
Yeah, that's I'm always wondering. Like, I have always wanted to, you know, get pulled into something, not just because oh that's viral, but pulled in because that's interesting.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't know if so many people are pulled into the viral, oh, it's got a million views, so I should pay attention.
Yep.
Rather than like I was a kid and I'm like, oh, what's Lou Reed and the Velvets about? What's Alex Chilton and Big Star about? What's
Yep.
Sun Ra about? I want to find like, and that wasn't the top 10. It was just something that was super interesting and different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted. Like even the MTV, when you saw those bands on 120 minutes, I would stay up to go see the replacements or
Yeah.
see REM on IRS because I wanted to see something different. I wanted to hear something different.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually have someone on our show every Monday. His name is Bob Sansevier. He's a local guy. He's known our family forever and ever. I think he knew my dad before I was born, even, or maybe shortly after. And he has his own podcast. It's called the BS Show. BS for Bob Sansevier, but also for the other thing. I don't know what kind of language policy you have on this
No, I'm
podcast,
okay. I'm okay with stuff.
but he also his family has a farm. They don't grow anything. It's like a ranch. They got all sorts of different animals and stuff. Mostly horses. They do a lot of horses. And they put out this video on their social media about this mule. Um, and it was just like jumping around and kicking at its mom and just being like a little jerk like mules are, newborn
Mhm.
mules. And that video ended up getting 250 million views.
It just went viral. Yeah.
It's an insane amount of views. I mean, 250 million, that's basically the entire adult population of the United States, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
It's crazy.
And so you'd be thinking, 250 million views, his show must be one of the biggest shows in the world at this point. But no, because those viral views that you're getting, the people watching your viral content, it's such a low quality audience. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about like them as human beings. I'm just
Yeah.
talking about they're going to watch your viral content and they're going to scroll away and they're going to forget you existed in 30 seconds.
Yeah. And they might not even like click through on anything you're trying to offer.
Exactly. They don't convert because that's not what they're here for. They're here for the thing and then the thing's over and then it's on to the next thing. I don't want more. I want different, nonstop.
Yeah, that's a big problem a lot of people are
Hmm.
running into, like, on the net is, like, just because you have a lot of views doesn't mean the actually click-through rate
Yep.
is good, and if people make decisions, like, does that really mean they're actually gonna buy the record or they're gonna buy the service or they're
Exactly.
gonna buy the thing? Because they tend like, if you ask somebody for money, they don't wanna do anything. The
Yep.
the most of the time, they're not gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, look at these games on Android or iPhone or whatever. These like the Candy Crushes or the Clash of Clans or whatever. They've got I think a billion people playing them, but it's only a tiny, tiny fraction that ever spends any money at all. Maybe one
For the
percent of
add-ons.
people
Yeah, for all
spend
the extra.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's a fraction of that that spends any appreciable amount of money. So, but these apps, they do make tons of money, but in order to get that much money to make it profitable, you have to be in the millions and millions of monthly plays because the fraction that gives you money is so small that you need a gigantic audience
Yeah, you
just
have
to
to have
sustain
this
yourself.
massive amount because, like, you get these people, like in music, you get these billion views, but actually, who buys the record?
Exactly.
Who buys the merch?
Yep.
So you can get a band that maybe has 50,000 fans, right? But the fans in that group, they actually buy the vinyl, right?
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
buy they buy the T-shirt, they buy the buds, they show up at the concert. That small indie artist could be alive recording for 10 years. Where on a big label, it's like, wow, we can't have them on a big label because they're not generating enough for the big label. But
Right.
as an independent, you can survive,
And
and
that's how
that's
we are.
yeah, that's how
Uh,
it works.
I mean, we are a relatively small podcast, despite the fact that we've been going for years and it sustains the careers of multiple people, we're still relatively small. We're not a smash hit. You ask someone even locally, if they've heard of the podcast, odds are they're going to say no. But we
Mhm.
have enough of a fan base that's dedicated that it just works for us.
Yeah, that's people, the conversion rates and stuff, and business people get into it because I mean, I work
Hmm.
in the finance area with like in banks and insurance companies, and they're all about the money.
Yep.
Um, but it's like some folks, they just don't understand like the quality. Like I've always said, like if the right person sees my post, I get the opportunity situation there. Like it's a success. Like if I only had 100 views on something, but I got a really cool person to actually click my thing, and then I end up getting to work with them.
Hmm.
That's how I measure the success. Is because I actually got an opportunity, not the fact that it's a cat video,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, for years we had an ad campaign out on Facebook, and we were getting tens of thousands of people clicking on it every month. Tens of thousands of people were going to our website. And I was like, this is great. So many people are going to our website and looking at our stuff. And then I really dug into it. I looked at the analytics, I looked at the bounce rate, the amount of time they spent on our site on average, that sort of thing. And I think maybe a dozen would spend more than 3 seconds on our website.
Yeah, that's the
So
number.
it's really like raw numbers really mean absolutely nothing. It's the quality of the individual
Yeah,
person listening
it
to it.
actually simple.
I'd rather have 500 people listening a week that listen to the whole thing and
Yeah,
engage and go in our chat room and go on our social media than a million people who listen to our show for 10 minutes in the background and then just forget we exist the next day.
yeah, there's just like just the quality, and then do they return? It's like, like when you
Yep.
talk to, like my dad was an insurance agent, right, for 30 years. And you got the guys who would just like quick hit, sell something that really wasn't good. Then they're never
Mhm.
gonna get that customer to come back and repeat business.
Yep.
My dad was about building relationships with the customer. So he got their kids, he got their friends, he got their neighbors because he gave them something quality and they got reputational trust, and then they would come back rather
Right.
than getting this large amount of people who are just churning and they don't come back. So it's like if you can get people to come back and then stay in and then recommend you,
Right.
that's what you want.
Well, I think one issue with it is I don't know your opinion on Joe Rogan, but it doesn't really matter mine either. As a podcaster, we all know that Joe Rogan is like the king of
He's the
podcasts in
king,
terms of
yeah,
how much money he makes.
yeah.
Regardless of what his views are, I don't even honestly know his views, to be honest. But I do know that he makes a ton, just an insane amount of money. And he does that by having a large dedicated fan base. But the problem is, so people will look it up and they'll be like, I don't know how many views he gets a month, so I'm just going to say, 5 million. That's probably low, but whatever.
Yeah, it's hot.
They'll they'll look it up and they'll say, "Oh, Joe Rogan gets 5 million views." And then, this other channel, they also get 5 million views. So they also must be as rich as Joe Rogan.
Mhm.
That's not how it works. 5 million very low quality views that are watching your content for 5 seconds are literally worthless. Whereas the Joe Rogan, I mean, people are talking about him. You go on World of Warcraft and people are talking about what Joe Rogan just said. That is a dedicated fan base and that is what every creator wants.
Yeah, you get the person that sits there and listen for 2 hours.
Yep, exactly.
He gets the people to sit there and listen to the thing for 2
Yes,
hours.
he does. And make clip. That's another big important thing. What really sustains artists, especially these days, is they'll watch the podcast or watch the video or whatever they do, and then they'll make fan content of it. Maybe they'll make like a fan animation, or they'll clip out and make their own best of, like,
Mhm.
reel, that sort of thing. Fan engagement of that level, that's when you know you've made it.
Yeah, when you get people, when you get some artists make the mistake of, like, banning their fans from doing stuff,
Yeah, no, you
and
don't
then
want to do that.
then they're like, "Oh, because it's my content." It's like, "Okay,
Right.
well," it's like, "Oh, I understand it's your content,
Yeah, I
but
get why they do it, but it's definitely it's
missing
misplaced because they
missed
think,
opportunity."
yeah, they think I put all this money and time and effort or whatever into making this content, and now people are cutting out clips of it and putting it on their own YouTube channels. So why should they be allowed to do that? But it spreads the word, and
Yeah, that's I
it
think the root.
suggests that you have dedicated fans who care enough about your stuff to put their time and effort into making something new out of it, and then people see that, and then that's really how you get dedicated fans.
Yeah, it's like fan art, you
Yeah,
get
exactly.
somebody he creates like a comic book, and then there's all these people manga, and then people create the fan art, and then they get
Yep.
excited and they're into it. But if you say you're gonna sue all your
Mm-hmm.
fans, then you're gonna lose your fans.
Yep.
It's like that's not the brightest move. But I just think about when somebody wants to make a podcast, you wonder like I see a lot of businesses and they're doing it like infomercial. Like,
Yeah.
and okay, like, I understand why they're jumping on it, but then they're gonna create like, it's gonna drop off because
Yep.
if people realize that that's not really a podcast like a Rogan podcast or like somebody who actually has a vision, it's actually an ad.
Yes, exactly. I actually interesting you mentioned that because I just talked to someone I know, and she said that there's this group of entrepreneurs that came to her, and they wanted her to start a show for this group. So she would be hosting it, but then these entrepreneurs would be on the show, and they would basically just talk about the businesses that these people are running. And I was like, that can work, but if the entire show is just, here's someone from XYZ Corp, and we're going to talk for 40 minutes about how great XYZ Corp is, and then tomorrow I'll tell you how great ABC Corp is, people are not going to stick around for that.
No.
You can interweave it into it, but there has to be a reason to be there aside from just telling you, here's a cool product that I saw.
Yeah, you gotta connect to, is there, like, a purpose? Is there a story?
Exactly.
It's gonna connect, and your story like, your company's there, right? And you gotta put that in. But do
Yeah.
you actually have a story that connects to somebody that's passionate about a subject, and somehow your business is related to that subject or related to that story, and you can weave it? If you gotta be, like,
Hmm.
intelligent about how you're gonna do that, and if you are able to be very creative and not make it feel like an infomercial, it might make it feel like a hard sell, then maybe you'll get people to connect, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if you have the CEO of a corporation come on and you say, "So, tell us about yourself," and they'll be like, "Oh, well, I've increased our net profits by 17% year over year, and our stock has gone up by 23.5%." It's very like, sure, business wise that sounds great, but it's so dry.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get an audience there, and plus, you can just read like a shareholders report for that information.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if somebody
if they come in and they say, well, I was born in a jungle and I was found by, Tarzan found me and raised me and now I'm a CEO, you're going to get a whole lot of views there, even if you're still just talking about your success story as a CEO because it's interesting. It's
yeah,
not
if you
just
put the
bland.
vulnerability in, like, if you say, "I had a health crisis," or "I had some kind of thing," right? And then I
Yep.
was able to come out of that, and I was able to be successful, and here's my product too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you tell that human story and you make
Right.
somebody care about what you're saying, you make them relatable so they can actually see themselves in it too,
Yeah.
then that's how you can convert if you do that. But if you don't, if you're just trying to get somebody to buy your stock or buy the
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin or buy whatever it is, then it's all just a sales job. And
Yeah,
yeah,
people will
sales
see
guys
through
want
that.
to do that, but it's not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not like the old days where you could just be like, here's my superior product, therefore buy it. And people would be like, yeah, that makes sense. Because, I mean, so you said you're a child of the 70s. I was
Yeah.
born in the 80s, so, adjacent. And so we both remember a time when advertising was about, here's why we're the best out of these three options. These days, it's here's why you should buy our product out of 500 options. Because you're competing with a billion people in China. You're competing with 700 million Europeans. You're competing with all 300 million Americans. Back then, that wasn't the case. Things were still relatively local. And even if they weren't local, they were still regional or,
Yeah.
it was just within your country or whatever. But now everyone in the world is competing with everyone in the world. So you can't just be like, you know, here's the statistics on my product.
Also, I
I
mean, they
mean,
need to be a little more creative because,
yeah.
like, it seems like the Madison Avenue guys, when I was I'm born in '67. I remember watching commercials in the in the mid '70s.
Hmm.
And it just seems that level of creativity and even the music. Like, if you think about the music from a lot of commercials in the '70s, it's like pretty high quality music,
I still remember a lot of commercials from my childhood because, yeah, they'd write these jingles
high
and they were
quality
like, yeah, surprisingly. I mean, God, these jingle makers. We actually
because they're musicians.
we interviewed a jingle maker a while back, and they were making seven figures for a while there because a 5 second jingle was what got stuck in your head. And when you went to the grocery store and you saw this thing on the shelf, and you'd hear that jingle in your head, and you'd buy the thing.
But they're not so a lot of the jingles today are so inane.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
they have
I can't name any, to be
but
honest.
they didn't this seems like in the '70s, you actually had a real musician or real
Yep.
songwriter,
Hmm.
real musician, actually bands actually putting it together, orchestras, and like they they really put some passion into it. Now you have these people, they just try to weave the name of the product into some kind of nonsensical, totally like it totally is annoying. I mean, the
Hmm.
annoyance level is so high with most of these jingles.
Well, yeah, it
They
goes back into the whole the mathematical model thing. They know that if you put the name of the product within the first 2 seconds of the jingle, then it increases
yeah, but
conversion
it's
rate by
so
so many
inane.
percent, and
It's
it all just becomes the same.
it just it like it makes you want. Then you people just turn it off. Like people like I don't want any ads,
Yep,
and they go pay for services where they don't have ads
right.
because the ads are so oppressive that they don't want to hear them.
Hmm.
They don't want to see them.
But you got to give it to them. We all know 1877 cars for kids, don't we?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it just becomes like you want to
Yep.
get it out of your head.
Yeah, I know. But it's in your head, and that's all they care about.
But yeah, it's just like it's like maybe you can have some craft to it. But
Hmm.
the musician in me is like, why can't you have some craft to it if you're gonna put that in my head? I hate
Right.
having all these garbage things in my head.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like I said, everyone's competing with everyone. So now you're getting 8 billion people all trying to sell you their stuff rather than your local community or whatever.
But when it gets to like I was pointing out these business people trying to create podcast, if like somebody's trying to create a podcast, they're not a business person. They have a vision. They want to get their vision out into the world. Given your experience, like what would it be the first like top three things you would tell?
Well, it's interesting. I actually listened to another pod. So we're both on Podmatch. That's actually how we found each other. Um, and I've been talking to a bunch of different podcast hosts, and I listen to their content first to see if it's a good fit. And there's a podcast that talks about podcast. There's actually many of them. They just talk to other podcast hosts.
Hmm.
It's just like a big podcast thing. And this episode, she had someone on and was talking about there's so many podcasts right now. I think there's something like 3 million podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Apple Music or whatever right now. But if you really dig into it, I think something like 90% of them don't ever make it past maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
The
that's
average lifespan of a podcast is incredibly low. And I know several people myself. They started a podcast, they did it for maybe a month, maybe 6 months
yeah.
tops,
Drop
but
off is high.
they dropped off because, it's a lot more work than they thought it would be for one. If you just wanted Like you go home and your kids are in bed and you want to just like sit down with a buddy with a glass of wine and talk for an hour once a week, and that's your thing, that's a hobby, then anyone can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do a once a week podcast where you just have a chat with a friend. You could sustain that for years and years and years. But if you want to really make it what you do, like it is what I do. This podcast is what I do. My wife works, so we have supplemental income there, but this is the majority of our livelihood. Um, Consistency and volume are very important. Um, we put out 9 40-minute segments every week, which adds up to roughly 6 hours um, of content per week. Prior to June, we were doing every day an hour and 15 minutes. And then prior to that, we were doing every day 2 hours. So at our peak, we were doing 3 hours every weekday um, for quite some time. And you don't have to do that. I think that's a little overkill.
Yeah.
But you really do. If you want a podcast to succeed, you have to put a lot more effort into it than you think. It's not just, everyone's listened to a podcast. They know that I download the podcast. Maybe they're listening to us right now. They downloaded this episode and they listen to it for an hour and they say, okay, these two are talking on mic for 2 hours or for an hour. And then they shut off their equipment and then they go home and they never think about it again. But that's not how it works, especially when it's something that you do for a livelihood or a big part of, maybe it's maybe you do a 20-hour job and then you do the podcast for the other half of your income. You're going to be thinking about it, the guest booking and the publishing it and running the social media and that sort of thing. You have to be willing to put, I would say, at least 20, 30 hours of work into it every week. And that's once you're situated, once
Yeah.
you're established. If you're starting out, probably more like 50 or 60 because going from that new podcast that no one's heard of to a podcast with 500 weekly dedicated fans, it's very, very difficult. And it's 500 fans doesn't sound like an insane amount, and it's not. But you need to cultivate a fan base. And the way you do that is by constantly communicating with fans. If someone goes on your Facebook page, and this is actually a mistake that we made a lot in the early days, we would put out an episode, and then people would comment on Facebook, and it would be just like something dumb, like, great episode, or I bought their book, or something like that. We'd have an author on, and someone would say, I just bought their book. And we're like, great, we're doing good things for the author, we got a fan. But we didn't reply to it, we didn't like the things, we didn't engage with the engagement.
Oh, okay.
You need to, every time someone reaches out and engages with your content, you have to make them feel seen. Because if they feel seen, they're going to do it again and
Come
again.
back. Yeah.
And once you get a critical mass of people doing that, then it kind of sustains itself. Like back to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's not going on Facebook and liking every comment on everything. He would be there for 300 hours a week, for one.
Yeah.
But for two, he doesn't need to, because if there's 50,000 people commenting on every post, it's an ecosystem. It's alive already.
It's kind of self-fulfilling.
It sustains itself. And once you're at the self-sustaining engagement ecosystem, that's when you can really, you can go to your podcast, and then you can, pay someone to edit it, pay someone to post it, that sort of thing. You're solid. We're not at that level, but I know the various different levels of success, quote unquote. I don't have any delusions of ever being a multimillionaire like Joe Rogan with millions of fans out there. I don't think I'd like it. We've actually talked to celebrities on our podcast before about, you go out to a restaurant and it's just an endless line of people saying, can I have your picture? I loved you in this. Can I have your autograph? And it sounds like a terrible way to live to me, to be honest.
Yeah, the celebrity bubble. Like you might want the money, you might want the fame, but you don't want all that attention.
Yep. Yeah. Once you get that big, your life is no longer what it used
You're
to
not
be.
your own. I mean, then you got to have security, your house.
Yep.
You got to make sure you got, you probably got to have security,
Right.
Concerns. You
So I
gotta
mean, I
think
guess
about what you do compared
I
to
guess
like what you did before.
yeah, it's a question of what do you want out of your podcast, I suppose. Is this just a hobby for you? Because if it is, then just, do whatever you want, really.
Yeah.
Um, or do you want, a couple thousand extra dollars a month? I mean, that's not terribly difficult, but it is, you got to break through the barrier of getting sponsors and that sort of thing. People talk about like the dynamically inserted ads. A lot of podcasters do that. We did it for ages. And it's fine. Like when you watch a YouTube video, the YouTube
Yeah.
dynamically inserted ads, um, it's a good amount of change you can get out of doing that. But for those to be something you can live off of, you're talking millions and millions of views every month.
Yeah, you do have
That's
to have
really
enough
difficult. That's
numbers.
why we were talking earlier about that dedicated fan base, that cover band who's got, 1,000 people who show up for their shows and that sort of thing. That is what you want. You want people who are going to demonstrate that they engage with your content, and that's going to make advertisers happy. And then you could get an advertiser, you could get some sponsored content. That's the easiest way to at least get a
Yeah. Get a real
decent amount of money on a
Yeah, if you get a
podcast.
real sponsor and then like, if you like the music model is like you sell vinyl, right? You sell merch, you got the merch table.
Exactly.
When you show up at the concert, you got a merch table, you got or some of your roadies or some of the people in your organization in your band are running that merch table, and you actually make more money from your merch than you do from streaming. Most of the
Yep.
bands I know, their merch and their when they publish their own vinyl or their own tapes, whatever they do from the merch side. And now to the point there, some of these record companies are trying to get a piece of the merch.
Yep.
Where like most of the time they were saying, well, like, oh, you can do that. And now they're trying to jump on that. And we're like, no,
Yep.
no. A lot of indie guys are like, don't touch my merch. Because
Yep.
like,
Exactly.
like that's how I make my money. And like, you're not really helping me. So I run the merch, you run everything else. It's like I
Hmm.
don't even touch that.
Yep. Yeah. We've got our own merch store. It's not a huge amount of merch that we sell, but it's just one of those things. You gotta be everywhere, more or less.
Yeah, I think you also gotta like if it becomes a chore and you don't wanna do it,
Right.
then you know why these people only last like 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, because 'cause I've been doing it since 2016. It's like I do it because I love it, right?
Yeah.
I do and I'm here because I like to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it is stressful at times. I mean, when I wake up, the first thing I do is I check my emails. When I go to bed, the last thing I do in a day is I check my emails.
it's a
Um, I'm
job.
communi- I'm communicating. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm communicating. We communicated for what, a week before this appearance, if
Yeah.
not more. It's a lot of back and forth with every guest, and when you have 5 guests that you have to book every week, you could be talking to each one of these guests for a few hours every week before you do the show.
Yeah,
Um,
this prep you gotta do, like, I mean, I have to set up the StreamYard for every
yep.
guest. I have to go set up, like, my QR codes, which we
Yeah.
have one for you up there right now. But, I there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize, like I said, you have to set stuff up, post-production, we do run, like, reels. We do
Yeah.
run
Exactly.
clips.
That's a big part of
We
it.
we do a lot we have our own blogger page that we push out. There's
Hmm.
stuff that we do, post-production, like, a lot of our stuff is more clipping it up and then getting people to go to a landing page
Right.
and
That's what we do.
do the rewatch on that, so we do some work to create really interesting clips that will get people to come and watch, do the replay. So, I mean, it's work when you do that. It's like for every guest you set that up, you have to do all that additional work, and it becomes like a job, you know.
Yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
think it feel like a job because I like it, but there are aspects of it that are organized like my job because I have a job.
Yeah. It's a
So
workflow, and you got to
it's a
do it.
workflow.
Yeah. I mean, we do 6 hours of content every week, but another 30 of that is outside. You're not seeing the other stuff that we do.
Yeah, the work you have to prep.
Yep. Yeah. Just last week, I had someone on our Facebook channel or our Facebook page say, so I built our app. It's a very, very simplistic app. It's basically just it takes the RSS feed and makes a list of episodes, and you can click on them. You know, I wanted it
Mhm.
to be as simple as possible because in the very early days of podcasting, you might even remember this in 2016, people didn't know what a podcast was or how to
Yeah.
listen to it. And it would like we'd had a pretty complicated app, and people were like, I don't know how to use this. There's so much stuff. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll make something super simple. And I haven't had any complaints about that so far, because the easier you make it
Yeah.
to
You gotta
listen to
make
your
it attractive.
show, the
Yeah.
more likely people are going to listen to your show. But even as simple as that, I had someone last week send a comment, and they were like, I'm launching the app and it's freezing, and I tried reinstalling it and that didn't help. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I opened up the app, and sure enough, it froze. And so instead of having 4 hours to do laundry and dishes and stuff around the house,
You're working on your app.
now I'm diagnosing why the app is freezing, because I'm the app guy and I can't have it, be broken for an extended period of time. So I just had to go sit down and figure out what happened. And it was thankfully very simple. It was just a malformed URL in our RSS feed that was messing up the app. So that was something I could fix without pushing out an update. But I have had issues where I push out an update and everything's fine for a week, and then all of a sudden I get a bunch of bug reports, and now there goes my weekend. I gotta
Yeah.
put this out. You can't have a broken product out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same level like when I'm in software design. We have our
Yep.
beta stuff. We've got we have to push our fixes out,
Yep.
and you have to treat it like a business, because it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, just like musicians, run into this trap, and artists put in the trap is like, oh, I just want to spend time creating the work. Well, you can spend all the
Exactly.
time creating the work, but you got to sell it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The majority of my job is not creative. The majority of my job is administrative.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of
that's
it.
also, it's necessary. It's like, you can't have a house without walls. Like the important parts of a house are, the HVAC and the plumbing and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, the
But you got to
infrastructure
build a house around those things, or else those things are kind of useless.
was the foundational stuff. It's like you got your workflows, like your booking
Hmm.
system. We got some tools and we use Podmatch and stuff. You use like whatever calendar thing you use to make it easy for people to
Yep.
book you. So I have systems that people can just go to my booking system, and then they can figure out when I'm available, and I kind of default to that. So I don't have to have a lot of back and forth going. Like I set up a really clear calendar, and
Hmm.
then people are able to find out when I'm available. And I don't spend. I try to limit because I'm in software design. So I don't want to have to spend a lot of time going back and forth booking these guests, right? I want to make it so
Right.
there's as least amount of steps as possible. So I kind of worked out the flow so that people can just do it in like instead of 10 steps, do it in like three.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And I mean, like, I don't want to dissuade anyone who thinks about starting a podcast from starting a podcast. I talk about how hard it is to monetize and how much work it is and that sort of thing. Sure, but I've been doing it for 14 years, and I will do it for as long as I can sustain it,
mhm,
despite the fact that I've got all these different jobs. I probably got 4 or 5 different, roles
in
behind the
your
scenes in making
yeah.
the podcast work. And, I built our website, I built the app, I do the social media, I do the editing and posting, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress a lot of the time. But I still do it, and it's still what I prefer to a 9 to 5, certainly.
What could you doing this when it's like your own business? It's like anybody that's running like a restaurant knows there's parts of that job that you probably don't love.
Yep.
Right. There's parts of it that you're really passionate about. You're probably not really into like the inventory so much.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're probably not into having to clean things up as much, you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
and then when when you have to clean it really good and do the inventory good and then do the accounting, it's like you're probably into taxes. You're probably not really excited about that. So, but when you're running it, you got to do all those things.
Yep. A couple months ago, I was staying after the show 2 hours every day, going through our backups. So we had backups of the show going back to the very first show, but they were kind of haphazard. The naming system was all
Um,
off, and there were missing episodes and that sort of thing. And I spent probably 3 weeks staying after the show for a while, just
to
getting all that
organize it.
sorted, finding these MP3s that were missing. Where are they? Why is this one? Why are there two episode number whatevers? Which one's the real one? That wasn't a fun thing to do, and it
Oh
took
yeah.
up a lot of time. But it's one of those things that if your backups are messed up, then one issue that we've had over the years because we've been going for so long. In the early days of the podcast, we would do bumper music. And we would do bumper music as in whatever we wanted. So we would just play some song. And then eventually the content ID bots started becoming a thing.
Oh yeah.
And we actually got banned off of YouTube. Our channel was wiped out because of it.
Yeah, they can like do all kinds of things to you when you use that
Yep.
stuff.
So now we have something like 2,500, 3,000, something like that, MP3s in a vault somewhere that are inaccessible to anyone except for me.
Hmm.
Thousands and thousands of hours of content that we can't just put out because we would just end up running into the same content ID.
You'd have to go try to run it through like some kind of. Well, I'm a musician. There were ways that you could kind of maybe pull that out, but
Yep,
that's a lot of
exactly.
work.
But you have to do it for every single one. And I mean, there's no free service out there that's going to process 3,000
No,
MP3s
you'd
for
have to
you.
do it. Like I know how to. I'm an engineer, so I can do it, but I don't know if I want to spend
Exactly.
time doing all that.
Exactly. And the other thing is we had like ads for old content. We'd like say things like, for a long time we worked with this charity and a percentage of our profits went to that charity. That's not true anymore. But if
Yeah,
I put out that episode and we say a portion of our profits, et cetera, people aren't going to know that that's not true. So it's misleading.
yeah, you have to
So
pull.
that's also something that needs to be cut out. So every single one of those episodes needs to be manually gone through and you have to take out stuff. And
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah,
it's a lot of work. And having those backups is one part of making that work a little bit easier so I can slowly put out this old content.
slowly go through your archive and like, yeah, that's always something that's interesting because every musician we have our backlog of our source
Mm-hmm.
material,
Yep.
and eventually sometimes we go back and we look at it, and it's good to have because a lot of times you can say, hey, I can actually go into this and pull out an idea. I like to go back into my archive and then say, oh, maybe I should bring this guest back,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I should take this topic and do it again. And it's kind of cool to have that history
Right. Yeah.
because then you can use it to kind of feed forward if you review it. It's like a loop. It goes
Yeah.
back and forth.
I actually recently did that. We had years ago, probably 12 years ago at least, we had this local high school kid. He's a hockey player. He was a hockey player. And then he got in a terrible accident. He got paralyzed, I think, from the shoulders down. And we had him on that 12 years ago. We talked to him. We did an interview. And then I was going through the archives about a year ago, and I saw his name. And I was like, we haven't talked to him in a long time. Maybe we should have him back. And we had him back on, and we could talk about how he's improved. He's regained some use of his arms, that sort of thing. And it was just interesting to talk to this guy 12 years later. He
Yeah.
was a high schooler at the time. I think maybe young college, 18, 19, something like that. And now he's this grown man. He's in his 30s. And it's just crazy to see how things change over the time. And I could put out that archive too. I put out that archive and I said, here's the episode when he was so young. And now here's the episode today when we're all 12 years older.
Yeah, it's really cool because I've had musicians, come on, and come on 3, 4 times and then talk about like
Yep,
where they were
us too.
4 years ago and now where they are now. And then when we put that new episode out, we take the first. Well, here's the first episode we talked to this artist,
Yep.
and then we kind of tie them together, and then we get the replays on that episode. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's cool, to actually have that like that history and be aware of your own history and
Yeah.
kind of link it together and thread it together so it's a consistent story.
And that's the kind of thing that dedicated audiences appreciate a lot more than, someone who's going to come and watch your thing for 5 minutes and then,
Yeah, because
be done with
you're
it.
hoping people like stay with your brand, stay with your
Mm-hmm.
content, and they know who you are, they know who you've talked to, and it's like this continuous thread where it doesn't just have to be the latest hip thing, right? It
Right.
could be like within your ecosystem that you actually have people that are aware of your history or aware where you've been, where you're going,
Right. Yeah.
and that's really cool. I think that's a cool narrative to have. Um, so I
Yeah.
think it's interesting.
One very unique aspect to what I do in that regard to what you just said, the history and stuff. So I mentioned earlier that my dad was on a local radio station. So I was born in 1986, and he started doing the morning show in 1986. So he started doing this morning show, and then a couple months later, I was born. Um, and he talked about it on the radio, obviously, so everyone listening knew that I had just been born. And then over the years, he kept talking about, oh, my son is in grade school now, my son's going off to college, et cetera, et cetera. And these people who had been listening to him listened to me grow up. And now a lot of those same people are listening to me talk about the birth of my son 4 years ago and the birth of my second son 2 years ago. And I'm talking about how, oh, Ethan's going off to preschool now. And they remember my dad talking
Doing the
about
same
that
thing.
exact same thing with me. It's very, very surreal, actually. When
That's
I'm
cool.
made to think about it, it just feels unreal, kind of, because these people have been part of this ecosystem for 40 years, listening to my dad talk about me as a baby, and now here they are listening to me on the air talking about my kids. And yeah, it's crazy how that can happen.
Well, that's an awesome story to tell, but we kind of hit our hour
Yes.
mark, and I want to let everybody know we do have the QR code up there with something we've been doing lately. So if you take your phone and you scan, it will go to the completedisaster.live website. So if people go there, what do they find there?
Well, right now, if you go to completedisaster.live, you're going to see a banner that says Complete Disaster, and under that, it'll say Tom Barnard Podcast, and that's it right now. The idea is that eventually there will be more shows, so there will be banners, banners, banners. You can click on any given show and go to a landing page for that show. Right now, I launched that at the beginning of June, and then on the 19th, I had major surgery, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to kick up some more shows.
More stuff on there.
But
Okay.
we have been talking about it. So right now, you go to completedisaster.live, you click on the Tom Barnard Podcast banner, then you'll see our website for the Tom Barnard Podcast, which is the podcast that I have been talking about for the past hour.
That's awesome. So I want to let you know, everybody know that you can click through there. We also have your Instagram below. Those links below are fully clickable on the platforms we've been on. We've been on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick, and we will be on all the other platforms that you can watch a podcast that are familiar, like Spotify video podcast, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Facebook, all those different platforms. We create a landing page. We'll get that to you guys, and you can just pick whatever platform you like if you want to watch a replay and let people know about it. I want to thank you again for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is actually the first podcast I've been on as a guest.
Oh,
So
cool.
you're my inaugural guest appearance.
Yeah, I'm supposed to do that. I do that. I do guest on podcasts sometimes, but this year I haven't really done it. I think I did one show. I need to get on some other people's shows, so I
It's
will be
more
doing
work,
that.
but
Yeah, it's more work.
it's one of those things. Yeah, it helps the show. But I mean, I'd rather be doing this than pouring through 3,000 backups on Dropbox. So
Well, thank you. Have a great weekend. I hope you don't have to spend all that time on the backups, but I want to thank you again for being on the show.
yeah, thanks for having me on.